This video will prove that America today is in fact Egypt, and just like Egypt too.
זה הזמן לזעוק את הזעקה שבוערת בליבנו.
רק אנחנו מחליטים בשביל עצמנו.
הלב והמוח ביחד זה כוח.
זעקת, השכמה.
All men are created equal. Indeed, Brother Washington. All Freemasons meet as equals, and we have an opportunity to create a nation in the very essence of Masonic morality. It would be wonderfully symbolic, don't you think?
It is in America that the transformation will take place and has already commenced.
World democracy was the prominent dream of the classical occult philosophers, and it was well known in their circles that thousands of years ago, the mystical orders of Egypt knew of the Western Hemisphere, and specifically a great continent. This continent was America. It was during this time that a bold resolution was made, declaring that this Western continent should become the site of the coming philosophic empire of the world. Now, scholars and historians can't agree on specific dates for this arcane declaration, although it would have been before the time of Plato, based on veiled references in his works.
The Greek biographer Plutarch described ancient voyages that portray this great continent in the Western Hemisphere being visited by the ancient Greeks. They not only reached our shores, but explored part of the Great Lakes area. Through symbolism they preserved in mythology, their knowledge of this very continent we call America, which the ancient polytheistic Greeks called blessed. This continent was anciently set apart for coming generations in the great human experiment of the democratic commonwealth. This great continent would become the New World, the New Atlantis, or what Jeremiah the prophet called the hindermost of the nations.
There has seemingly always been religious persecution, specifically involving the dark arts of magic and occult mystery schools throughout the centuries. It was common for kingdoms to outlaw these types of practices in the public eye for different political reasons. So in order for a nation to fulfill the esoteric prophecies, it must first offer freedom to practice the old religions of the world. Furthermore, when we consider this freedom of religion declared in America's foundation, we now understand that this had absolutely nothing to do with protecting Christianity, as we've been told, but was rather a cloak for the occult societies to freely advance, officiating their long prophesied philosophic empire of the world. America would be a soil rich for the dawning of the new order of the ages, or as declared by our founders, the Novus Ordo Seclorum.
The occult was spreading quickly in the West by the late 1600s, drawing many settlers from all over the world, offering them a safe haven to seek out and practice the ancient arts. Many forms of Babylonian and Egyptian magic, astrology, Kabbalah, polytheistic paganism, and the likes of such were prevalent. And of course, Christianity was also present. In addition, a hybrid mystical version of Christianity was quite popular in those days. Moving forward on the timeline, the celebrated founding fathers by majority are known to have been a mixture of secret society occultists, deists, and even universal spiritualists with a side of Christianity. They tactfully aimed at cultivating the prophesied New World, where the new order of enlightenment would radiate as a beacon of light to all the nations of the world.
זעקת, השכמה.
To all our brethren to receive the most merciful, the Grand Master.
we have an opportunity to create a nation in the very essence of Masonic morality. It would be wonderfully symbolic, don't you think?
You'll be wanting to put the all-seeing eye on our banknotes next.
You think I'm taking it a bit far?
Please don't ask me questions like that, Brother Franklin. You know I cannot tell a lie.
Oh, come on, Brother Washington. Everybody lies occasionally, surely, especially politicians.
Not me. Not even so much as an alternative fact.
We must all be aware of fake news.
The people must be free to think what they like as well. We can have no thought police in our new society. The foundation stone of our new nation built on all those principles that we hold dear.
The plans for our new capital city already have a very Masonic feel to them, yeah.
Candidate for initiation into the order, I'm giving him a little introduction into some of our mysteries. These two gentlemen are founding an entire nation built on our principles.
We have great promises for our new nation. You know, I wonder if other presidents after me will also be Freemasons.
Many will be. And Freemasonry will become embedded in the American culture. And the eye will appear on the banknotes.
Oh, God.
These principles will be honored with a gift from your French brethren. A gift that will be a welcoming beacon to the poor and oppressed.
This is the statue we are giving you.
It's a bit small, isn't it?
Oh, this is a maquette. The real thing is bigger. Much, much bigger. I call her Liberty Enlightening the World.
Catchy.
America will produce a great many great Americans from many different walks of life and many different fields, and many will be Masons. Sportsmen, actors, writers, soldiers, filmmakers, businessmen, inventors, astronauts.
What on earth is an astronaut?
No, they're not.
I don't follow.
Well, they're not on Earth, they're in space. In fact, Brother Buzz Aldrin was the second man to walk upon the surface of the moon.
That's the best thing I've heard this evening.
What, that a Mason walked on the moon?
Man on the moon. Amazing. But don't forget the musicians. Do not forget the musicians.
Known as that rule of three again. The 3 degrees.
זעקת, השכמה.
Interesting is the belief that America is the land previously known in the ancient world as Atlantis. But regardless if there's any truth to that, we have an ironic bit of overlooked history I think we should mention here. Many early 19th century observers held with a high regard this idea that there was an advanced civilization widely populating the North American continent long before the American Indians ever did. As a matter of fact, in 1811, the governor of New York, DeWitt Clinton, told the New York Historical Society that this was a well-proven fact, and he even went on to explain that there are numerous remains of ancient fortifications that were found in this very country, America, demonstrating a population that far exceeded that of the Indians. But of course, this type of history tends to get covered up and lost in an age of cognitive dissonance.
It's important to note that the 19th century American Iroquois Indians were reported as having esoteric fraternities, or what we would call occult secret societies, among their tribes. This is yet another historical fact that was documented by Governor DeWitt Clinton. Researchers explained these esoteric Indian fraternities to be a form of ancient Freemasonry prevalent in the land. These claims were taken seriously when the Seneca leader, known as Red Jacket, as well as other New York area Indians, were seen wearing Freemasonic-style medals in the shape of the square and compass. This is a fact well documented in the 1903 New York State Museum monograph titled Metallic Ornaments of the New York Indians by archaeologist William M. Beauchamp.
So we see the Luciferian god of Freemasonry thriving in the land, being worshipped and served here long before the founding fathers had officiated the American government. It would seem that neither the early settlers nor the Indians had brought Lucifer worship to the land, but were rather continuing the occult traditions of the prior civilizations of this great Western continent. Multiple civilizations, ancient and modern, living and acting under the same demonic principality, all on the same American soil. This idea is further vindicated as we look to the hidden history of the name America.
Tom Horn explains in his book Zenith 2016 that there is much encoded in the name America. Pointing to the works of famous theosophists and historians, he breaks down rich historic clues into America's secret destiny, hidden within the name. This title America is, according to some people, the title from which America is taken. It is related to Mesoamerican history, serpent worship, and giants. And according to Freemasonry, connects the founding of the United States and its capital designers with wisdom derived from the fallen flying seraph.
According to Manly P. Hall, Amaruka is linked directly with the plumed serpent god known as Amaru. This god was worshipped throughout the Americas under different names.
זעקת, השכמה.
This isn't some trade agreement. It is a total removal of sovereignty from these countries, which will also result in a completely new currency called the Amero.
Fall. Apart from that, I think one thing people who are dollar-based need to focus on is the Amero. That's the one thing that nobody's talking about that I think is going to have a big impact on everybody's life in Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. The Amero is the proposed new currency for the North American community, which is being developed right now between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico to make a borderless community, much like the EU, and the dollar, Canadian dollar, U.S. dollar, and the Mexican peso replaced by the Amero.
By default of this agreement, the American Constitution will eventually be obsolete.
He was the god Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, Gucamatz in Quiché, and in Peru he was called Amaru. From Amaru comes the word America. Amaruca is literally translated land of the plumed serpent. These ancient American cultures had priestly orders and ceremonies, and according to Hall, these ceremonials are of most importance to students of Masonic symbolism and mystical philosophy, since they in fact establish beyond doubt the existence of ancient and divinely instituted mystery schools on the American continent.
It bears irrefutable evidence as to why the most notable occultists of centuries past had declared America to be the fulfillment of this ancient esoteric prophecy, becoming the world democracy capital, and the manger, if you will, awaiting the coming dark Messiah who will wage war against the saints. This secret destiny was very much in the minds of many of the founders of the United States and can easily be seen throughout our brief history as a nation.
The foundation of America, just like the rest of the foundation of the rest of the Western world, is built around two kinds of building blocks. There is an occult, esoteric set of building blocks, going back to the Enlightenment era, going back to the age of the Renaissance, pulling from ancient mythology. But there's also another form of building block. It is a Christian ethic. There is a Christian Judeo ethic that's also a part of the Western world. And it's the tension between those two sets that we see coursing through America, coursing through all of the world, really. But America is really unique because it's a clash point. You can travel around this country and there's a multitude of Christian crosses everywhere. America's a land of Christian crosses. And then you go to your state capitals. You go to your national capital. You go to your large skyscrapers, and you've got deity statues. You've got monuments erected to pagan gods and goddesses. And so while Christian crosses dot America, representing that Christian ethos that's a part of the American culture, there's also this sense of an occult, esoteric foundation. And the symbols of your democracy, the symbols of your national flavoring is built around monuments and statues representing deities from the ancient world. There's a paradox in America.
Well, I think in the birth of America, they had, no question, Freemasons and others involved in the very beginning, and there were other secret societies besides them. So you have that intertwined in the birth of America anyway, and that was by design.
There was an occult history and destiny, even before 1776. The belief on the old world was that the United States could and would be a new Atlantis based upon the writings of Plato and also by the writings of Sir Francis Bacon. All of this information from the old world was inculcated in the design of Washington, D.C. There was an occult destiny and secret information that would influence the future of the United States.
זעקת, השכמה.
Isn't it interesting how all the secret societies and clubs, occult clubs, are in the same, roughly the same area in Washington, D.C.? Whatever's Egypt got to do with the United States of America?
Prophets in the modern fulfillment of this destiny, and we've mentioned him before, was Manly P. Hall. Hall is considered to be the most influential Freemason of the 20th century. Hall was not just an entry-level Mason. He was actually a 33rd degree known as a Grand Sovereign Inspector General in the Luciferian craft.
Manly P. Hall believed that America had a secret destiny, that America is a special nation, that America was somehow set apart to lead the world forward with a new way of viewing not just itself, but viewing the world as a whole. Manly P. Hall had an incredible background in terms of esoteric understanding and occult philosophy. The work he did on Freemasonry, the work he did on occult philosophy, still today forms a very powerful foundation for the esoteric beliefs of various secret orders. Manly P. Hall had this incredible sense that America is a shining city, a city that all the world can look to. Now, he said it all throughout his writings. There's this illustrative model that America is this shining city, this beacon for the world.
Oh, God! These principles will be honored with a gift from your French brethren. A gift that will be a welcoming beacon to the poor and oppressed.
This is the statue we are giving you.
It's a bit small, isn't it?
Oh, this is a maquette. The real thing is bigger. Much, much bigger. I call her Liberty Enlightening the World.
Hall knew that the ancient writings all pointed forward to America becoming the philosophic empire that would be the pinnacle of the new order of the ages. By the time of Hall's life, it was already well known that the architecture in D.C. was predominantly reconstructed pagan temples of the old world, built to revive the power of the old gods, very similar to Vatican City in Rome. We're dealing with replicas of ancient ritual chambers and monuments erected on strategic street layouts that form magic symbols required for high-level sorcery.
Washington, D.C. was designed by L'Enfant, a Frenchman that was hired by George Washington. And he had some rather bizarre ways of looking at things. You know, if you were up on an airplane, of course there weren't any at that time, but you would see the crosses and the types of shapes that are really reminiscent of some ancient, rather occultic figures and histories. Which doesn't surprise me. That has attracted Washington, that is, people that have that particular proclivity over the years, which is why they have a giant Wicca community, and then, of course, a lot of demonic activity. Why I refer to Washington as the most evil place in the world.
The architecture is by design in Washington, D.C. I mean, you've got individuals that were designing occult symbolism, and again, it's done in a very big and broad way. I mean, it's almost like you got You've got to be up in the sky to look down at it. You've got to understand the symbolism. That's all about hidden symbolism. You're talking even buildings that would be spiritually charged. They represent something. They, just like the temple in the Old Testament represents, things concerning God, concerning heaven. The Spirit of God guided the folks in Exodus to actually build those things to represent. So it's the alternative. It's the other side. It's them representing another reality. It's on the other side of the fence, spiritually speaking. It draws power. If they're spiritually guided for the architecture, then they're going to be drawing the powers. Ultimately, it involves the spirits that have guided them to take precedence territorially. We don't understand that a lot, but it's all about that unseen spiritual side that has guided them. That's the big issue.
זעקת, השכמה.
Further investigate, we headed to Ground Zero to meet up with Tom Horn and discuss some of the secrets of popular American symbols and their connections to the ancient past.
44 signers at least of the U.S. Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. They were committed to an esoteric plan. You had Europeans that were influencing the early founding fathers here. Why? Because they had this deeply held occult idea that was based on Bacon's New Atlantis, right? That at one time, in fact, by the way, Bacon wrote that he thought the original Atlantis might have been right here, where Washington, D.C.'s capital city is now. Wow. And that this is where it would be rebuilt. This is where it would rise from the ashes, right? To become an occult democracy dedicated to all of the ancient pagan gods. Now, whenever we talk about this kind of stuff, I doubt that most of the people that are walking around us here in the Washington Mall have any clue the forethought that went in to the way this design is laid out, with the obelisk standing in our background. In the other direction, the U.S. Capitol Dome. What this symbolism all means had to do with their dream of building a new occult democracy that would once again give honor to the ancient pagan gods. And in fact, as you know, you can go on the official Library of Congress website and you can read an article called The Most Approved Plan. Right. In fact, all of the original paperwork is right over here in the Library of Congress, right? And what does it say? It says that they advertised to all these engineering firms around the world, France, America, right? For somebody to come up with a plan about how the capital city, which Jefferson named the capital city after Capitoline, the ancient Roman city over which Jupiter was the god that ruled all of the other gods. And so they advertised this engineering plan. And all these firms around the world turned in their submissions. They all wanted to get these lucrative Washington contracts, right, to build these buildings and edifices. Thomas Jefferson rejected all of the plans, and our own Library of Congress website tells us why. Because he specifically wanted to shepherd a plan in which this would be built based on the old Roman pantheon and dedicated to all pagan gods. That's what they want, and that's what they built, and that is the reason why, as you and I are standing here in the mall today, you have this obelisk. Now, it's the largest obelisk of its kind in the world, standing 6'6" inches high, 6'6" inches long, each measurement at the perimeter of the base. But it's really based on ancient Egyptian mythology, the original design of which, an obelisk facing a dome, the dome of Isis, the temple of Isis, right? It was a generator. It had alchemy involved with it. The purpose of it was to draw up from out of the underworld the seed of Osiris, so that Osiris could take his rightful place in the Pharaoh, and now Egypt has divine representation. Now this is based on the myth of Osiris, the dying and rising god, and his sister, wife, the queen of magical skills, Isis, right?
Right.
And so the way the story unfolds in antiquity is that the evil brother Set gets 72 conspirators. Now we know this number 72 is very important. We'll see it inside the U.S. Capitol dome in the 72 pentagrams. They waited 72 years from the signing of the Declaration of Independence to dedicate this obelisk to George Washington, right? So this number turns up over and over. 72 cosmocrators, evil spirits, help Set kill Osiris. They capture him, they nail him up in a box, and then chops him into 14 pieces. This also plays out, by the way, in American history. Chops him into 14 pieces, throws those pieces into the Nile River. ISIS searched the banks of the Nile River, but she's only ever able to find 13 of the 14 pieces of Osiris. The missing piece is his phallus, his male organ. So what does ISIS do? She takes the 13 pieces of Osiris and she affixes them together in a more perfect union. In the United States of America, we take the 13 colonies and we bring them together to form a more perfect union. And right here in the capital city that represents that union, we also recreate the dome and the obelisk.
זעקת, השכמה.
So ancient Egyptian religion is literally woven into the fabric of the foundation of America. There is absolutely no denying the connections and symbolism between the two. But it doesn't end with symbolism. This actually plays out in ritual. Right as Tom was getting to the breakdown of the ritual, on location, we were met with what was later determined to be high-level audio surveillance. Our wireless microphone frequencies were being tapped into, causing our transmission to suffer interference at times. What you are about to witness is the product of that interference.
Now, so important, by the way, was this story where Isis creates a magical obelisk to replace the missing part of Osiris's epiphallic corpse, right? She sits on, to be blunt, the obelisk on the corpse of her dead husband brother. And Isis fashions the very first ever raising of Osiris enchantment ceremony, in which she calls forth the seed of her dead husband from up out of the underworld. It magically emits from the obelisk into her womb, and Isis becomes ever pregnant because she is constantly giving birth over and over again to the dying and rising god. Now, so important was that mythology, by the way, that it formed the center of the cosmology of all of ancient Egyptian magic, and then later into the mystery schools, Rosicrucianism, the Freemasons, right? So important was it that at the inauguration of every pharaoh who would take his role as the king of Egypt, during a festival called Opet, they would put the pharaoh on a barge and they would pull him up the Nile River. As he was on the Nile River, the laity of Egypt are walking along both sides of the river, right? And they're replaying the myth of Osiris and Isis. They take him to the largest religious complex ever built, the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak, where he gets off the barge and he walks into the domed belly of Isis, the temple of Isis. And as he is standing in that domed building, looking out into the mall, into the courtyard where the obelisk is erect, and the masturbatory sun god Ra has rose up into the air so its heat can fall upon the obelisk to excite it, right? Mm-hmm. Inside the belly of Isis, the magicians of Egypt, and we know these guys had significant occult power, because when Moses goes down to face the Pharaoh to say, "Let my people go," they actually were able to recreate almost all of the miracles that God performed, as Moses is standing there with his shaft. So we know these guys had supernatural power. They recite the original raising of Osiris ceremony while the Pharaoh is standing inside of the dome. We don't know what exactly the language around that is, but we know it was preserved in the mystery schools. And across town from where we're standing right now at the Hera Dome, they claim that they continue to have this important language, the spells, the incantation for the raising of Osiris. Well, they would conduct that ceremony while the Pharaoh is standing there. The seed of Osiris would be drawn up from out of the underworld through the testes of the obelisk. It would magically emit into the ever-pregnant belly of Isis, and Pharaoh would become transmogrified. He entered into the building a man, he comes out of the building, he is a god. And all of Egypt celebrates because now they have divine representation. Now fast forward to this present day. The Freemasons openly admit that the obelisk, the dome, well, again, it's on the Library of Congress website. These are structures designed and dedicated to all of the ancient pagan gods. But how many Americans know that at the inauguration of every American president, while he is standing over here in the dome, the pregnant belly of Isis, looking out across the mall at the obelisk over here in the distance, that across town at the Herodome, the headquarters of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry 33rd degree, they are conducting the raising of Osiris ceremony in anticipation of the day that literally the spirit of Osiris, or who the Greeks would call Apollo, is going to rise up out of the underworld to become incarnate in a future American president who will take his rightful place according to the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States, which both Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his Vice President Henry Wallace wrote about. Wallace wrote about it in his biography, that he convinced Roosevelt, I think he was trying to take credit, but that he convinced Roosevelt that the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States, the Novus Ordo Seclorum, was a Masonic prophecy pointing to a day in the future when the United States would rise up to take its rightful place as the capital of the New World Order, the fulfillment of the Sibylline prophecy that says, what? That Apollo is going to rise up from out of the underworld, take his place in a man, and give birth to a new golden pagan age. Literally, the generator to make that happen is what we are standing in the middle of today doing this recording. And if you go inside the Capitol Dome and look up into the underside of the pregnant belly of Isis, what do you see? The apotheosis of George Washington. Literally, apotheosis means to become a god. And what god is George Washington becoming? Walt Whitman, the famous American poet that is so connected to American history, said he's becoming the Osiris.
Freemasonry and the founding of America, there is a very important link between the two. Freemasons held a very important part in America's foundation. George Washington was a Mason in good standing. A number of the signers of the Declaration, your Articles of Confederation, a number of them were well-known Masons. A number of the generals in George Washington's army were also well-known Masons. America's founding is steeped in Masonic lore and Masonic history. But it's not just America's founding. That flavoring has flowed through America generation after generation after generation to the point where this country, the United States, has a Masonic saturation in its history, in the fabric of its culture.
When the Freemasons designed this majestic pagan city of D.C., they intended it to be their revived ritualistic chessboard, with all pieces in place for their scheduled conjurings, with the ultimate goal of awakening the spirit of Osiris, Apollyon, to one day inhabit their final world king. They have carried out this famed ritual with the inauguration of every U.S. president, firmly believing that the prophecies of America will in fact come to pass in the fullness of time.
So the founding of America was clearly the beginning of the ancient prophecies being fulfilled. The great blessed continent of the Western Hemisphere to become the philosophical democracy that would lead the world as a beacon of light into the new order of the ages.
זעקת, השכמה.
This is the statue we are giving you. I call her Liberty Enlightening the World.
In order for this philosophical empire to bloom, there had to be two main prerequisites met. A safe haven that legislated and protected the freedom of all religious practices, and a zenith of the secret teachings of the old world. And that's where secret societies entered the stage.
היום נפתח את העיניים, נתחיל לראות הכל נכון, וגם נפסיק לבנות פחדים שבמסווה של ביטחון. ואם כבר יש פה ביטחון זה עוד יביא לניצחון. מהפכה שמחליפה את המגפון במיקרופון, וכבר נמאס מדיכאון, נמאס לי מזכוכית בדלת, להיות בודד בגלל שיש לי ארצ'י ונזלת. מציאות קשה בטון, הם רק שופכים על זה עוד מלט. טוב, הדלקתי את האור, אבל אתם פותחים את הדלת.
העיניים נפתחות, אוזניים נפתחות, התדר הוא אתם, ביחד מאחדים כוחות, מקשרים מוחות, משדרים חידוש במדרכות, צעדי ענק לעבר העתיד, לוקחים מושכות, ידיים, נרים את הלחיים, למען דור שלם, כי המוזיקה היא מים לכולנו, ואם העולה מולנו, טרנספורם מתפורר, כל אחד יוצא המשורר, אור חדש יוצא. בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נמהר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נמהר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר, בואו נתעורר. נו, זה הזמן לזעוק את הזעקה שבוערת בליבנו.
רק אנחנו מחליטים בשביל עצמנו.
הלב והמוח ביחד זה כוח.
זעקת, השכמה.